Priesthood is a great mystery. It's a mystery that is focused around the mystery of Jesus Christ. And a man who is called to be a priest is called to immerse himself in that mystery, to be a mediator between God and man, particularly through the holy sacrifice of the Mass and by the sanctification that takes place through the sacramental life of the Church.
The signs of a priestly vocation are a man of faith himself, and that man of faith then becomes visible to the greater community around him. So people then all of a sudden begin to point out to you, have you ever think about becoming a priest? And you yourself might have thought about it, but you've kind of pushed it in the back of your mind. The Lord sends us people to give us those messages. There are messengers all along the way on that journey to priesthood for each and every one of us.
Well, first of all, none of us is worthy. I don't know if you remember what Pope Francis said shortly after he became Pope, when somebody asked him to describe himself, what can you say about yourself as a person? And remember what the Holy Father said. He said, the one thing I can absolutely say about myself as a person is that I am a sinner. Now, I felt so good when he said that, but think about it for a minute. Would the Lord be calling somebody who he wants to be compassionate to sinners who didn't have an experience of the struggle in his own life? He wants people who understand the struggle of sinners and who understand that by turning to Jesus, we find all that we need in order to become holier.
A man who is called to be a priest has to love Christ because he is called to love the church, the people of God. And so a man who is discerning a call to the priesthood has to look to our Blessed Mother as the example by which we are all called to follow, to humble ourselves the way that Mary herself humbled herself, to be open to bear forth the presence of Jesus Christ to the world around us in the same way that our Blessed Mother bore forth the Christ child. None of us are worthy. All of us, though, have to be open to that calling through the power of the Holy Spirit. Because even though we may think that we have no gifts to offer, that we're not particularly gifted in any way, the Lord knows our hearts, and the Lord understands what we can bring to that ministry in the church that we are called to as priests.
I don't know if there is such a thing as a perfect person other than Jesus and the Blessed Virgin Mary. We were all born with sin. We're all influenced by sinful patterns around us. We've all experienced them in our lives. And the whole story of salvation is not one of being born perfect, but being perfected, by being saved, by being changed and transformed. The important thing for any person thinking of becoming a priest is that he not be afraid to let God do what God can do inside of him. It's not about us, it's what God does with us, with this human clay that we're all made out of. But God can work wonders out of dust and clay.
It is essentially important for us to stay open to a vocation, because it is ultimately Christ who is calling us. And we, through discernment, need to find out and understand the life that God is calling us to live. What men discover about themselves when they're living in the St. Isaac Jogues House of Discernment in Watervliet, or when they go off ultimately to seminary, is they come to discover more fully the gifts that they themselves have through the power of the Holy Spirit. Men are not obligated to finish, but I think what's important for a discerner to recognize, are they willing to find out the answer to that question? Because if you never go down that path, and then you live with that wondering for years and years, whether or not was I called to be a priest? And sometimes we do miss the calling that God has for us. Because what we really are asked to do, all of us as Christian people, but in particular as men discerning a vocation, is, are we willing to ask God what is His perfect will for me in my life? And if we're willing to ask the question, are we willing to hear the answer?